opening prayer, and we're going to sing a song and traveling along. Bob, I know everyone slept well, you ate well. I hope you're getting to know any person on the trip that you have not had an opportunity to get to know. What a delightful evening many of us had. There were some folks that I didn't know that what a great treasure, what a great gift it is to be with each one of you. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this is the day that you've made. We do rejoice. We're glad in it. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for each day that you've given us in the days ahead, especially today. And so, Lord, we look forward to learning from you. And so teach us, cause us to give even more praise. And I pray this in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. So, what's the best short song that we can sing to get going, Mary?
Doxology.
Say it again. The doxology is a great choice. Ready? Here we go. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Amen. Fantastic. Any questions before Constantina is going to speak? And I do think for Alexander, we need to give him another round of applause for Alexander. And for Constantina, let's hear it for Constantina. Constantina, we're so thankful for you. We had a great day yesterday with Vicky and Constantina. It's going to be another great day, and here she is.
Kalimera.
Kalimera.
Did you sleep well?
Yes.
Did you enjoy your evening yesterday? Most of you told me that you went out, you had dinner out. Did you? Was it good? Did you make good choices? And the city was busy as always.
Just packed.
I believe that you enjoyed Thessalonica.
Yes, yes.
It's time to leave, and we are continuing our journey towards the south. Next stop will be Kalambaka, where the monasteries of Meteora are located. So during the morning we will be driving to Kalambaka. We have a 3.5 hour drive with a restroom break included in about an hour and a half, 2 hours from now. And then as soon as we arrive at the town of Kalambaka, you will have free time for our lunch break on the central street at the central square, where there are plenty of Greek restaurants and taverns around for you to have a light Greek lunch. I don't know if those two go together, but we'll give it a try. And after that, we will start our tour of the monasteries. So we will have the chance to drive by all 6 active monasteries. It's not just 2 that are situated on top of the rocks of Meteora. There are actually 6, 4 monasteries and 2 nunneries. So we will have a panoramic tour of the rocks and the monasteries, and then we will visit 2 of those, the nunnery of Saint Stephen and the monastery of Varlam. And as you read yesterday in the WhatsApp message, One has a very easy access, so nothing to worry about. The second one is actually the second easiest with 140 steps, because all those monasteries, the only way to get to the top of the rocks where they are, the only access is a staircase, and sometimes you have to go down to the foot of the rock and then start going up. We're talking about 200, even 300 steps in other monasteries. But the two that we have chosen are very representative of what Meteora is. First of all, it's a nunnery and a monastery, so women and men, and especially the one of Varlaam, and as a parenthesis, all those strange names like Varlaam, Rusanu, that I will have to tell as soon as we get there. Those are the names of the first founders of those monasteries, so they have no meaning, they make no sense. They are just names of the first monks and the first founders back in 13th, 14th, 15th century. So in the monastery of Varlaam, we will mostly focus on the church as a means to teach and express certain theological concepts. That's why there are specific frescoes like Christ, Virgin Mary, the evangelists, that are placed at specific parts of the walls. So we will see the iconography and why each theme is located at its particular spot. So we will discuss on the symbolic aspect of a church and its theological aspect, and we will also, on the second monastery, the nunnery of St. Stephen, we will talk more about their lives, what their daily schedule is, what's the economy and the financial sources of the monasteries, what it takes to be a nun or a monk, if there is a procedure to unbecome, let's say, a monk. So we will discuss about all those practical aspects of monasticism. The complex of Meteora monasteries, as we've said, it's the second most important of the Orthodox world after Agion Oros, the holy mountain, that we saw its highest mountain and its location on our way to Philippi the day before yesterday. Now, as we're driving on the Central Avenue, one of the Central Avenues here in Thessalonica, Tsimiski Avenue, it's good to leave with just a few sentences of what makes Thessalonica that important in history, and especially for Christianity, because we've talked about lots of dates and names, and we saw many different monuments that belong to the Roman era, the early Christian times. We saw Ottoman monuments. You've experienced the contemporary city, but what is that makes Thessalonica that interesting when we examine the case from a biblical and a Christian aspect? First of all, one last glance at our square, Aristotle Square. It's going to be after the traffic light. So Thessalonica is the second congregation that Paul founded here on Greek land. I say Greek land, not Greece, because don't forget that there wasn't a national country back then. There was, we were provinces of the Roman Empire. So it's better to say Greek land than Greece, in order to be slightly more correct. So it's the second congregation after Philippi chronologically, but we know that it was one of the congregations that kept its faith already from the beginning, and had the opportunity and had the privilege to be, according to many scholars, the church that received the oldest text of the New Testament, which is the letter to the Thessalonians, written by Paul while he was in Corinth. So Thessalonica, the Thessalonians, received, if not the oldest, one of the earliest texts of New Testament scriptures. Also, it was here in Thessalonica in 380 AD that Theodosius II, another Christian emperor, the first one has been Constantine the Great, who declared Christianity as the only official religion of the empire. So it is here that Christianity becomes that official and imperial, 380 AD. Don't forget that it was already a big city, only second after Constantinople, Istanbul. That's why when the Roman Empire was split in two, the two contestant cities for the leadership of the empire, they were Byzantium, that later on became Constantinople and was eventually chosen, and the other one was Thessalonica. So from the very beginning, Thessalonica was a very important city. So 380 AD, we have Theodosius declaring Christianity as an official religion here in this city. And later on, in around 8th century AD, we have two new nations arriving here at our territories. They are the Slavs and the Rus. And the two men that were sent to preach Christianity to those newcomers, they were from Thessalonica. They were Thessalonian monks. Their names were Cyril and Methodius. And they were the ones who taught Christianity to those new nations. They translated the Bible into their languages, and in order to do that, they had to invent a new alphabet that you all know as the Cyrillic alphabet, used by most of the Eastern European countries. So the Cyrillic alphabet, based on the Greek alphabet, as we're going to see, is named after that monk, Cyril, who was from Thessalonica and who was the one, alongside with Methodius, who preached Christianity to a vast group of people and nations, the Slavs and the Rus, the former Russians. The Rus are the Russians. And that's why the eastern part of Europe is all Orthodox. So Thessalonica remained a very important city throughout its all periods, in Byzantine, in Ottoman, late medieval. We have the Jewish presence that we talked about yesterday. Vicky, I bet she also mentioned the Jewish community of Thessalonica and how important it was. And here we are, 21st century, with Thessalonica being the second most important city after Athens in Greece. But don't forget what makes Thessalonica that significant. It's a congregation that received one of the earliest texts of the New Testament, the letter to the Thessalonians. Christianity was declared official here, 380 AD, and from here the two monks set off for their journey of the towards East Europe for preaching Christianity to the new nations.
Would you go back the comment again? So our alphabet is from Syria, and the person, Sarah, yes, was from Thessalonica.
So the Russian alphabet came from here.
Say all that again.
Yes, and I forgot. I tell you not to forget, and I'm the one forgetting at the end. We shouldn't forget of Cyril, Kyrillos in Greek, Cyril, who's one of the two monks who preached Christianity to the Slavs and the Russians, and he's the one, based on the Greek alphabet, who inventing the Cyrillic alphabet.
And his name is
Cyril.
Like Syria?
No, not
Cyril. Cyril.
So Second Thessaloniki was written in Corinth too, right after.
And the Greek alphabet, because I know you say it's all Greek to you, but it's literally all Greek to you, because you, especially those that are doctors or in most scientific sectors, the base of that academic and scientific vocabulary is Greek and Latin. So you definitely use several words that sound very sophisticated and too intellectual, but actually they are from the Greek language. Before that, I wanted to tell you that I have a map here of Greece. So if you want to follow the itineraries, please, you can have a look. It's practical because it has the most important places and monuments pointed out, and there are numbers behind where you can read a few sentences about that place. So if someone wants to have a look on that map,
Do you have one for everybody?
So when we went to the minor bed, we were talking about epinephrine, and I said, "Do you understand it?" He said, "That's a Greek word." Yeah. So no,
so the Greek language is spoken in 2 countries in the world right now officially. It's in Greece and in Cyprus. The Greek part of Cyprus, which never belonged to Greece officially as an entity, but that Cyprus always belonged to the sphere of the Greek world. So we again have to distinguish those two things, because many people sometimes are confused, believing that the south part of Cyprus was actually once part of Greece. So in Cyprus and in Greece, we have the Greek alphabet and the Greek language officially spoken and officially used. The Greek language is proved archaeologically that it's spoken here since 1400, 1300 BC. And that's because we have found clay tablets of the script that we call Linear B. It corresponds to the Mycenaean world, the late Bronze Age, that were deciphered by 2 British archaeologists back in the 1950s, and it was proved that it was a primitive form of Greek language. And we know that it was Greek because words like the olive tree, the vine, wool, deer, ox, man, woman, those the words found read there are the ones that I still use for those concepts and ideas until nowadays. So the Greek language, we can archaeologically say that it started then, or at least we know that it was already spoken by 1300 and 1400 BC. In Greece, we have earlier scripts that go back to 1700, 1800 BC. That's the Linear A, mostly found on the island of Crete and the Minoan civilization. However, those represent a pre-Greek language, because the Greeks, as a nation, we belong to the family of the Indo-Europeans, as you. As all Europeans, apart from the Hungarians and the Finnish, they belong to a different group of nations, family of nations. So the people before 1500 BC here in Greece were indigenous, so we cannot know the language that they spoke. They had a written form of it, but we cannot decipher it yet, at least. So Greek language appears as we've said, in 1400, 1300 BC. Now, when that civilization falls, that script is forgotten, the linear B. And by 800 BC, when the Greeks are reorganized and they have evolved into city-states with more complicated forms of administration, it's not just a king, but it is an oligarchy, a tyranny, democracy a little bit later, we see that they have evolved politically and socially, but they still speak Greek. Now they just write it in a different way. And this is when the Greek alphabet appears. The Greek alphabet is based on the Phoenician alphabet. So we traded a lot with the Phoenicians, and we got their alphabet and we added the vowels that the Phoenician alphabet didn't have. That's why all those Eastern alphabets like the Hebrew, the Arabic, they're also alphabets based on consonants, not vowels. And we added the vowels, and that was the Greek alphabet. We had a couple of letters that we skipped as the centuries went by, that we do not have anymore. But in general terms, the pronunciation of most of the letters is slightly simplified. What do I mean? There are several vowels, like the O's, the E, that nowadays have the same sound. However, back then, there was indeed a differentiation based on the letter. So we were discussing here that we have the Omega as the watch brand, and Omicron. Omicron, short O. Omega, mega, long O. It did make a difference back then. Nowadays, when I pronounce those two letters, it's exactly the same. And that Greek alphabet was taken to the Italian territories with the colonization of the Greeks towards the west back in 7th and 6th century BC, and became the base of the Latin alphabet. And as we've said, in early medieval days, it was taken to the Eastern European nations with Cyril and Methodius, the moment they were preaching the gospel to the New Slavs and the Russians. So the Greek alphabet was the base of those two alphabets, the Latin and the Cyrillic. Regarding the Latin alphabet, the Greeks, we had one single alphabet, but many different fonts, we can say. As when you type in your computer, in the Microsoft Office, you choose the font. So Arial, Calibri, Times New Roman. That something similar happened with ancient Greece. So it was one alphabet, but different ways of writing the same letter. Some letters were more rounded, other letters had sharper angles. So the gamma, like the gamma race, which is the third letter of the Greek alphabet, there was a specific city that had colonized Lazio, and they wrote it in a more rounded form. And that's why we have the C, which is again the third letter of the alphabet. The delta, which is a triangle, they rounded it with more rounded angles. That's why delta evolved to D in the Latin alphabet, and so on for some other letters. Now, we may have the same symbol, but in Latin alphabet, and that also goes for the Cyrillic, it doesn't mean that they will phonetically match. So we have the R, which is the Latin P, for example. The Latin P is the Greek R. The Latin B in Greek is V, V of victory. So you may read tabebna, but it is actually taverna, tavern. So the X of the Latin alphabet is H. It has the sound of H in Greek language. So we may have similar and identical, in some cases, symbols, but phonetically they do not necessarily match. the big evolution of the Greek language took place with Alexander the Great, because the Greek language was spoken until his days, 4th century BC, only here by the Greeks, so by a limited number of people and at a very specific geographical region. Alexander the Great, as you know, conquered the East, practically the known world back then. So he moved towards the east, conquering what is nowadays present-day Turkey, Syria, Iran, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Egypt. So all those territories further east to Pakistan and Indian borders. He respected the local cultures, of course, and that's why he founded many cities. He persuaded the generals of his to get married to local princesses and local people. But he also wanted to create a common cultural ground for his empire. And in order to do that, Greek language had to be disseminated towards the east. And inevitably, when a language is spoken by non-native speakers, it is simplified. That thing always happens, until nowadays with English, for example. That's why, in order to create that common ground, linguistic and cultural ground, Greek was simplified, and that's how we end up having the koine, kini, in koine, that means common. So it was the standard Greek language. Maybe it wouldn't be the language spoken by the native Greeks. We may be using more academic forms, but definitely it was the lingua franca, the language of trade, the language of commerce, the language of arts, of religion back then. And if you had an Egyptian and an Asian wanted to communicate, they would communicate in Greek. As English nowadays, you have an African and South American conducting business. They were gonna communicate in English. So that was Greek back then. It was the lingua franca. And it's very important to realize that as soon as that common cultural ground was set, then Christianity, who appeared a few centuries later after Alexander the Great, used the Greek language as a tool to disseminate much more efficiently, because it was a language that was understood by the intellectuals, it was understood by the merchants, by the wealthier people, by the poorer people. It was the international language. That's why with the missionary journeys, Christianity could be spread outside the physical, let's say, limits that the area of Israel has, because Greek language was used as a tool in order to spread that message of Christianity to non-native, to this very big group of different nations that the Roman Empire had under its auspices. So this is when the big evolution of the Greek language was done. That simplification in grammar, in syntax, in pronunciation, done with Alexander the Great, and reached its culmination during the Roman days. And that's why the language of the New Testament is Greek. Although some of the authors of the New Testament books are not Greeks themselves. Paul, for example, was not Greek himself, but he was very aware and he had a deep knowledge of Greek culture. And Greek language is a fundamental element for those studying the Bible. That's why it is taught in most theological schools across the world, and if you want to get to the core of the meaning, the sense of the word, you have to go back to the authentic text, which is in Greek. Greek survived even in Roman days as the language again of philosophy, of arts, of the intellectual elite, and then we evolve, at least this part of the world evolves to the Eastern Roman Empire, where in the beginning we have a simultaneous use of Latin and Greek, and then Greek predominates, it's the Byzantine Greek. And until nowadays, with further simplifications in grammar and syntax, Greek is nothing else, modern Greek, but an evolution of ancient Greek. So that's the big difference with Latin. Latin is a dead language, and we have Italian, Spanish, French as sub-products of Latin language, whereas modern Greek is not a product of ancient Greek. It's the same language evolved. That's the big difference. As we've said, it is spoken by the Greeks and the Cypriots, and we also have the same alphabet, 24 letters. That's the modern Greek alphabet, consisting of 24 letters. And another thing, it's not the alphabet that brings those two nations together, and it's a particular and exceptional thing worldwide, is that the Greeks and the Cypriots, we also share the exact same national anthem. So it's not just melody, but it's lyrics as well, because there are a pair of countries like Estonia and Finland that share the same melody, but the lyrics are different. The Greeks and the Cypriots sing exactly the same anthem. When there's a football match or a basketball game, it's gonna be sung once, representing both countries. And the national anthem of Greece, another peculiar thing, happens to be the longest anthem in the world. If you play it fully, it's 56 minutes.
Whoa. Wow. Takes a long time to get the game started.
The highest mountain in Greece, it's a little bit less than 3 kilometers, 2,917 meters high. And you asked me the day before if there's a ski center on it. There isn't a ski center on Mount Olympus. There are several hiking trails, and you can even reach the summit of Mount Olympus. Something that I will never do in my life, to be honest. But there are several other ski centers, especially in North Greece and on Mount Parnassus, and even further south. So many people believe that it's just sun and summer in this country, but we do have a winter. And if you're here in, apart from the winter months, up to May and early June, you can still see snow on top of Mountain Olympus and on top of several other mountains as well. Greece is a mountainous country, so more than 75-80% almost of our surface is covered by mountains. We have several peaks that are more than 2,000 meters high, 6,000 feet and above. So that makes Greece a mountainous region primarily. The thing is that we also have a very long coastline because of the geography. We do not have a long, straight coastline with all those shores that you may be familiar with in the States, in Australia, in other countries. But our coastline is like a lace. So there are several capes and gulfs and bays and rocks. So what is it's very long journey if you want to sail literally by the coast. The length of the Greek coastline is almost 13,000 kilometers. That's about 9,000 miles. And we are the country number 13 in the world regarding the length of coastline. our coastline is 1/3 of Africa's coastline, and there's no comparison between the two places. Africa is a whole continent, we're just a dot on the map, but still it's the many islands that we have, about 5,000 islands, even 6,000 islands, whatever piece of ground that passes the surface is considered an island. So some even raise that number to 6,000 islands and rocks in the seas. The inhabited are 227 precisely, the inhabited islands. So this is what adds up to the kilometers, the distance of the Greek coastline. If you focus on mainland Greece, continental Greece, then it is definitely a mountainous region. We have several mountains. Mount Olympus is quite autonomous, independent. It stands on its own. It's not part of a wider mountain range. When we get to Meteora, we will see that there is, right opposite the rocks, there is a mountain range called Pindos. Geologically is the continuation of the Alps of Central Europe, and as they cross the Balkans, when they enter Greece, they get the name Pindos. So they start from the north at the Greek-Albanian borders, and they continue further south to Peloponnese, and even under the sea, and some of the summits of that mountain range even show up on the island of Crete. So this mountain range actually creates two different climatic conditions between the east and the west part of Greece, which are not evenly separated, so it's not half and half. By the west side of the Pindos Mountains, you have the west coastline and the Ionian Sea. So that territory is much more humid. You can feel more humidity. Temperatures are not that high during summertime because of that humidity. Winter again is not that harsh because of that humidity, but it is the rainfall by the west part of Greece is definitely higher than of any other region. That's why they are greener places. Not so many olive trees there. We do have olive groves, but it's not their label product. And some of the islands that you may have heard of that part is Ithaca, Cephalinia, Captain Scorelli Mandolin with Nicolas Cage and Penelope Cruz was filmed on Cephalinia, and Corfu as well, where Prince Philip was from, yes. Whereas the east side of Greece is the biggest part of Greece's territory. Since we do not get that humidity from the Ionian Sea, which is blocked by the Pindos Mountains, that's why you have more intense rainfall there. By that side, things are more dry. The landscape is definitely more arid. And here in the north part of Greece, we have cold winters with snowfall, with rainfall, negative temperatures as well. On top of the mountains, there's always snow during winter time, and in some areas closer to the borders, even in cities, they do get to experience white days. Spring is quite chill, and summer is not that hot as in the south, and you experience fall. We have slightly cool mornings and warm afternoons. In central Greece and the region that we are getting to, Thessaly, we have cold winters and extremely hot summers. It is a flat area surrounded by mountains, so that creates a microclimate. And we have these two extreme conditions. That's cotton, the white crop on your right. That's cotton.
What are you looking at?
And
It was over
in
to the wall.
Thessaly
It
at
was
the
cotton.
Meteora, during winter time, during winter we have very cold mornings, and you're gonna see that tomorrow morning. From what they've told me, colleagues that are there, they need a jacket in the morning, early in the morning. And they have a cool spring and a warm fall. Whereas in South Greece, from Athens and further south to Corinth, for example, we have very dry, hot summers with heat waves. A heat wave is, we officially call a condition as a heat wave when temperature is 38 degrees Celsius and above. So 38 Celsius, this is about 104, 105 Fahrenheit. But in Athens it can go up to 42, 43 Celsius. And we also have a drier climate, so we do get rain in winter time, but it is mostly a shower and a quick storm. We don't have those continuous long rainy days as West Greece has. We have warm springs and an even warmer fall, as you can see. Crete is a particular territory regarding climate because little by little it enters the subtropical region. So we see that the winters there are very mild. They have warm springs and very hot summers. That's why they recently introduced on the island of Crete banana, mango, papaya and pineapple, which are very tropical fruit for us. Only 1913. So right here where we are, next to Mount Olympus, at the foot of Mount Olympus, if we lived back then in 1913, right now we would be crossing a border. If we lived in 1912, excuse me. So Greece got the area that has until nowadays 52,000 square miles approximately. That's the territory of Greece, including the islands, 52,000 square miles. Only 1948, with the last territorial expansion. So how did things evolve? There were a series of events, battles and treaties that added up to the territorial surface of Greece. Everything starts in 1828, 1830, when the independence war against the Ottoman Empire ends. And Greece back then manages to liberate what is nowadays the Peloponnese, South Greece, the area of Corinth and further south, the Cycladic islands like Mykonos and Santorini, and Antiparos. Where is the Antiparos? Yes, that island. And Athens to Delphi region, Mount Parnassus. So I would say 1/3 of what Greece is nowadays. This is done officially with the Treaty of London in 1830. In 1862, the first royal couple of Greece, Otto and Tamalia, we'll talk about the Greek monarchy, lives after a revolution of the Greek people against the monarchy. Monarchy doesn't finish though, because the British give us an offer. So the British say that we will give you the Ionian Islands, that is to say Corfu, Ithaca, if you accept our if you accept our recommendation as your new king. And that man was George the First of the dynasty of Luxembourg, of the Danish family. So Greece manages to accept the deal, of course, and extends towards the west in 1864. So we have a change in the royal family. It's not Otto anymore, who was a Bavarian prince, but we have George the First arriving, and from that point onwards, if you study the royal families of Greece and Denmark, you will see that many people even coincide, and they share titles. So King of Greece was Prince of Denmark, and so on. They have the two countries, they have parallel royal history, royal background. That happens in 1864. In 1881, Greece manages to take the region of Thessaly, where Meteora monasteries are. So right here where we are, this is where Greece began. As we are traveling south, I say where Greece began in 1881. If back then, this is where the Ottoman Empire would end, and from that point onwards, Mount Olympus, that you can see on your right, there's even a bit of snow in some cuttings here and there at the very, very top. This is where the Ottoman Empire ended and Greece began, 1881. There was a series of Russo-Turkish wars during 19th century. The Russians favored the independence of the Greeks, not because necessarily of because of our faith and of being Europeans, but the Russians wanted to have access to the Aegean Sea. Greece, as you know, as you see on the map, occupies a very geostrategic location. We are right at the intersection, on the intersection between Europe, Asia and Africa, and again on the intersection between Black Sea, Aegean Sea and the open Mediterranean. So the Russians wanted to have a word in the Greek things by supporting the Greek liberation movements. 1881, we have Thessaly, Meteora monasteries, that is to say, incorporated. I have a map of all that, so I will send it in WhatsApp shortly, so that you can also have a look at the territorial expansions. They are the different provinces with different colors. So the area where we are, Epirus and Macedonia will be the next topic after our restroom break, were integrated in 1913. So we have the Balkan Wars, 1911, 1912. The first round was the alliance of Serbians, Bulgarians and Greeks against the Ottomans. We succeeded, we won, so we liberated some territories, and the second round was a fight between us. On one side it was the Greeks with the Serbians together against the Bulgarians regarding the partition and the distribution of those war territories. The Greeks won with the Serbians as well, and that's how we incorporated the region of Macedonia, like Thessalonika, Philippi and Epirus, which is the northwest part of Greece, shares borders with Albania. That was done in 1913. As a parenthesis, Bulgaria, although we are two friend nations and we have very stable and good relationships, whenever there is a war, like World War I and World War II, we are always in opposite sides, because Bulgaria always wanted and wants, I guess, until now, to have an exit towards the Aegean Sea. That's why whenever there is a big war taking place, that's why Bulgaria is always against Greece, in order to make an attempt for an exit towards the Aegean Sea that you see on your left. So 1913 we have this area incorporated as well. After World War and Crete, I forgot that the island of Crete also becomes part of Greece in 1913. The island of Crete in particular had won its semi-independence. It was an autonomous state, the Cretan Republic, from 1898 up to 1913. So it was self-administered under the auspices of the Ottomans, but with its own administration. And of course it was an administration that was sent from Athens to Crete. So it was as soon as the Cretan Republic in 1898 became semi-independent, there was the Prince of Greece sent there as the first governor of that republic. And in 1913, Crete was fully integrated to Greece. So there are two more regions. It's the region of Thrace, which is northeast part of Greece, further east from Philippi, shares borders with Bulgaria and European Turkey, the European part of Turkey, and the islands of Dodecanese, southeast Aegean Sea, further down southeast, like the island of Patmos that we're going to visit together during the cruise. After World War I, as Greece participated with the side of the winners, the Entente, the alliance, our alliance was Entente, we also got a share of the territorial trophies, and that was the area of Thrace. But we also got the area of Izmir in Turkey, the city of Smyrni, Izmir, where Ephesus, Kusadasi, that region. So we got that, and the agreement was to keep Izmir for at least 5 years, and after 5 years there would be a referendum led by the locals, and they would decide if they want to return back to the Turkish administration or stay with the Greek administration. As you know, since the antiquity, the coastline of Turkey and certain areas in the mainland of Turkey were colonized by the Greeks, so there was a very strong Greek presence diachronically in that region, especially at the coastline. Maybe not the majority, but the majority of the population, but the upscale part of the population, the intellectual elite, the lawyers, the doctors, the merchants, those were Greeks, like in Izmir, in Pergamus, in all those coastal cities, including Istanbul. And the king back then, the Greek king, Constantinos, decided to recover the lost Byzantine Empire, and he initiated a war against Turkey. That was the movement of the great idea, as we call it, to make Greece big again, as it was once back in the imperial days, the Byzantine Empire days, which was a great failure, to be honest, and I'll explain why as soon as we leave the restroom break. It's you see one topic brings another topic. This is how it is in politics and history. So we are in 1919 with Izmir in our hands, and Constantine, the Greek king, decides to to start a war against Turkey. So this is where we pause history. And what time is it? It's 9:45. So maximum a half-hour break, 30 minutes for you to use the restrooms, have a quick cup of coffee, and we are back on the bus at 10:15.
I got mine too, yeah.
Here, so I'm trying them out on you. Green is my favorite color. I love it more than blue and yellow combined.
We don't like that.
I went skydiving for the first time. This guy strapped himself to me. We jumped out of the plane, and as we were plummeting, he said, "So, how long have you been an instructor?"
That's kind of funny. I guess a 5.
Have they been tried out on you, Susan?
No.
There's more.
All the jokes I know I can't tell.
Oh, come on, Steve.
Traffic news. There's a potato chip truck blocking the highway. Expect delays.
Now, I like that one. That's cute.
I told my suitcases that there would be no vacation this year. Now I'm dealing with emotional baggage.
That's cute.
Albert Einstein was a genius. Albert Einstein was a genius, but his brother Frank was a monster.
Frankenstein. Albert Einstein.
I told my daughter, go to bed. The cows are sleeping in the field. She said, what's that got to do with anything? I said, that means it's past your bedtime. Sad news. The woman who invented throat lozenges died last week at age 92. But on the upside, there will be no coffin at the funeral.
That's really good.
Okay. I got a lot of thumbs up on that, and I could tell because I'm facing forward and I didn't see anything. So even though the eyes have it, as I was getting cataract surgery, seriously, as I was being wheeled back, I looked at one of the nurses and said, "Is your name Iris?" And she looked at Susan and said, "Is he like this all the time?" And I said, "I'm just trying to be cornea."
Evolution. So if you're connected, then you can find that in the WhatsApp group. So we were in 1919 when World War I was over, and Greece had won, among other territories, the area of Izmir in Turkey. So Constantine, the king, Constantinos, was in favor of the great idea to extend Greece towards Asia as it once was during the Byzantine times. He underestimated, however, the force of the Turkish army, and there were also politicians apart from the monarch who were in favor of that idea, forgetting that the Byzantine times were long gone and that Greece and the Greeks were not as powerful as they used to be back during those days. Apart from that, don't forget that the Greek army had been fighting non-stop since 1911. We have the Balkan Wars, 1911-1912, then we have our entry in World War I, and now there was one third war. about to get started against Turkey. In the beginning, the expedition was successful as we entered further mainland to Turkey. The British did not send the help that they had promised. Everybody agrees on that. And tiredness and exhaust arrived, and Kemal Atatürk, who was the great political personality and military personality of the Turks, fought back and pushed us again back to the coast. So that war ended with a great catastrophe. We call it the Asia Minor catastrophe, Micra Asiatic catastrophe, and to a very bad defeat, and ended with a very bad defeat for the Greeks. We're talking about 1921, 1922. Apart from the loss of Izmir territory, because there was no referendum finally done in the end, we lost that territory. Also, there was one more even bigger and more impactful consequence for the fate of both countries, what we call the mandatory exchange of populations. So for the first time in history, two countries agreed on exchanging their populations based on religious criteria. So all Christians of Turkey had to go to Greece, and all Muslims of Greece had to go to Turkey. I do not use the word back because those people were not meant to return back somewhere. Their homeland was where they were for centuries, because as soon as the Ottomans, the Turks, appeared in this part of the world around 1000 AD, the two nations and other nations like the Jewish people, like the Albanians, the Balkans, the Armenians, we've been living all together, mingled together on both sides of the Aegean. Aegean was not a boundary, it wasn't a border, but it was just a sea connecting two quite similar lands and territories. So 1923, with the Treaty of Versailles, that mandatory exchange is decided, and that involved 2 million people. 1.5 million Greeks, mostly Greeks, because Christian was a synonym to Greek back then, as Muslim was a synonym to Turkish. 1.5 million Greeks left Turkey and came here, and 600,000 Muslim Turks left Greece and moved to Turkey. The values of their properties were equalized, and that was a little bit unfair for the Greek side, because not because I'm Greek, but historically the Greeks were involved into trade, into more upscale professions, whereas the Turks were more modest here in Greece, and they were mostly into farming and agriculture. So the status of the two communities was not equal, and that was also valid for the properties. Parenthesis. Now we're entering a twin tunnel, which is the longest road tunnel in Southeast Europe. 3.7 miles long, 6 kilometers. And that was, it started being constructed in 2008. It slowed down with the financial crisis, the recession, and it was finally completed in 2017. A big project for the road network here in this region, because the alternative now, it wasn't an alternative until 2017, was a very narrow and windy street that went through the valley of Tempe, which is actually a gorge, and it was very dangerous because there were also rocks falling. So this is a twin tunnel, 6 kilometers long, 3.7 miles. talking about that mandatory exchange of populations, the real estate, the values of the properties were equalized. The Turks that left Greece and moved to Turkey, they occupied, they were given properties of the Greeks, of course, but the Greeks that came here, not all properties were enough. So most of those Greeks settled at the periphery of the already existing cities like Thessalonika, like Athens, especially the Macedonian region where we are. Since it was very recently integrated, there was a necessity by the Greek state to bring more inhabitants and make it more Greek, Hellenize the population. Hellenize means make Greek. So there was a movement to place those Greek immigrants from Turkey here in that region. However, many of those also settled at the periphery of Athens. That's why there are many neighborhoods like New Izmir, New Philadelphia, New World. Anything that starts with new is nothing else but a community that left its home place in Turkey and moved here all together and settled all together at the periphery of Athens back in the 1920s. So those that exchange radically and drastically altered the profiles of the two countries, because the Greek country became more Greek and the Turkish country became more Muslim and more Turkish. There were no other ethnic and religious minorities to worry about. And that happened once again in history in 1948 between India and Pakistan. We are the only two cases of mandatory exchanges of populations. That happened in 1923, 1924. The notice was very short for those people. They had just to leave with anything they could carry, anything portable. So all that, all the properties that they had, the land properties, they were all expropriated by the corresponding countries. The church, because we'll talk about that, the church, I don't know if I have mentioned, the priests here in Greece are not paid by the church. They are public servants and they are paid by the state. And that's because in the 1920s, the Church of Greece donated many properties and lands that had in order to accommodate all those immigrants from Turkey, the Greeks that had come from Turkey. So in return, the Greek state agreed to pay from that point onwards the salary of the priests. That's why the Greek priests, the Greek priesthood is paid by the state and not by the church, as it happens in most other Christian countries, Orthodox at least. And then we have our entry to World War II. So it's late 1930s. The first round is against Italy, with 2-year battles mostly concentrated in the Greek-Albanian border. The Italians fail to occupy Greece, and then the Nazis come and we enter the Nazi occupation period from 1941 until the 12th of October of 1944. We are talking about the Nazi occupation. However, the Greek territory was divided in 3 sectors. So it was the Bulgarians in the north part of Greece, the Nazi Germans in central South Greece, and the islands, including Crete, and Dodecanese southeast Aegean Sea. That was under Italian occupation. The Italians were there from World War I, actually. So that was the only part of Greece, present-day Greece, that wasn't integrated yet. Southeast Aegean Sea. So if you go to the picture I sent you in the WhatsApp group, it's the group of islands where it says 1947. So as soon as the Nazi occupation ends, The Italians, those islands of Dodecanese, spent a year or two under British rule or supervision, and then they are given to the Greek state. 1947, 1948 officially integrated. So this is the history of the territorial expansion of Greece from 1830s up to now, with the last one being in 1948. Churches, of chapels, those are placed at the spot where a deadly car crash had taken place. So it's not the tomb, but it is like a memorial set by the families of people that died in car accidents.
Probably the same thing.
And inside there is a candle. You'll see a bottle, that's the olive oil, in order to refuel the candle. There is a photograph of the person that died, and an icon of the saint after whom that person is named. So that's what you mostly find inside those little shrines. It's for car accidents. As you see, Alexander also turned on those screens so that you can see where we are on the map. And I believe that the map is going around. I don't have it in my hand, so the map should be circulating somewhere around. Okay, you can keep it and have a look at it while we are traveling. So we've mentioned the issue with Macedonia several times, so we can take advantage of the time to say a few things about it. First of all, there has to be a distinction of Macedonia as a geographical region and Macedonia as a historical region, an entity. So the geographical region of Macedonia is much bigger than what Macedonia is nowadays, the northern part of Greece, and what North Macedonia is, which is a neighbor country at the north part of Greece. So the geographical Macedonia included the Greek province of Macedonia, the country of North Macedonia, present-day North Macedonia, and the west part of Bulgaria. So this is what geographically Macedonia is. When we examine Macedonia as a historical entity, then geographically Macedonia shrinks. The heart of the Macedonian Empire, Alexander the Great, Philip II, was near Thessalonika, so in present-day Greece, and near Mount Olympus. It was at the north of Mount Olympus, precisely. This is where we have the tombs of the Macedonian kings, the tomb of Philip II. This is where we have the birthplace of Alexander, the capital of the Macedonian Empire. But even before that, first of all, we have the name Macedon already appearing in Greek mythology. So there is, there were several legends regarding the appearance of several tribes and communities here and there. So the name Macedon appears in Greek mythology, and he is the son of the founder of the Greek nation, whose name is Hellen. That's why it's the Hellenic Republic, and Hellas, Hellas, that you see on t-shirts, on souvenir stuff. Hellas, that's our official denomination, not Greece. So one of the sons of Hellen was Macedon, and the prefix Mac, M-A-K, as macro, That's a prefix that even survived in Latin and the Latin-derived languages. It means tall, long, because the Macedonians were considered to be, and they are taller people and more robust than the people of the south, the Greeks of the south. So we have the name Macedon in Greek mythology. Then we have the Macedonians as a tribe living at the periphery of the metropolitan Greek world. When we're talking about the metropolitan Greek world, we're talking about Athens, Thebes, Corinth, Sparta, all those big city-states, the most influential, the wealthiest, and those that defined the fate of the ancient Greek world. They had colonies, they had heavy currencies, they had big armies, so they are the protagonists. In central and south Greece, the Macedonians were situated at the north of Mount Olympus, so at the periphery of the Greek world. That's why their culture was always a little bit more, I wouldn't say primitive, but a little bit, their cultural progress was definitely slower than the progress and the evolution of the southern, of the Greeks of the south. However, in archaeology, we find tombstones of theirs with names carved on them already from 8th and 7th century BC, and the names are Greek names. The alphabet used is Greek, the words, the language written is Greek. We can very easily understand what is written, so there's no doubt archaeologically that those people belonged to the Greek nation. But because they were far from the spotlight, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, their traditions, their customs and ethics were a little bit more archaic, old-fashioned. So, for example, in South Greece we had oligarchy, we had constitutions, we had democracy in Athens. Here they still had a king. Things started changing when the great-grandfather and the grandfather of Alexander the Great, so we're talking about 400 approximately BC, decided to bring to the Macedonian palace, to the capital, Euripides, who was a very famous Athenian author of tragedies and plays, theatrical plays. We've mentioned him in Philippi. Paul used the phrase of a play of his. And little by little, the Macedonians started following what was mainstream for the Athenians already: classic literature, philosophy, theatrical plays. So they modernized their culture, and the big turning point was when Philip II, as a teenager and a young prince of the Macedonian palace, spent his adolescence in Thebes, in South Greece. Thebes was at its peak back then. It was a very powerful city-state, 100 kilometers from Athens, with a very strong army, with a military elite that was worldwide known, the Sacred Troop, as it was called, and the Sacred Troop, and with a very, again, heavy currency and a stable economy. So he spent his adolescence years there, and he got familiarized with military techniques of the South Greeks, with their philosophy, their political systems, their diplomacy. So when he went back to Macedonia and became the king eventually, he applied all that knowledge and he modernized the Macedonian kingdom. So little by little they gained ground, physically as well. They extended their territories, and in 338 BC there was a battle in central Greece near Thebes between the Macedonians on one side and the alliance of Athens and Thebes and Sparta on the other side. So the Macedonians won, and they united all Greek city-states under their auspices. That's why we're talking about the first empire of Greek history, the Macedonian Empire. Athens, Corinth, they were all member city-states of the Macedonian kingdom. Philip died very quickly. 2 years later he was assassinated, and Alexander the Great, his son, automatically became the new king. And he starts his expedition towards the east, as we've said, where he also died during that campaign in Babylon in 323, and then his empire is fragmented into 4 big provinces, and each province follows later on its own fate and history. So for the ancient Greeks, when we study the sources back then, there is no doubt that those people were Greek as well. Don't forget, however, that the history was written mostly by Athenian authors, and the Athenians, and there were certain Athenian authors that were very hostile to the Macedonians. It was the opposition, political opposition, as they were against the Spartans as well. That's why we have these misconceptions about the Spartans being very miserable and very strict and very military minded. It wasn't like that. It's just that the history of the Spartans was written by Athenians, and that's why we have these misconceptions that we have to solve now and re-examine. So the Macedonians there was never doubt by the ancient Greeks about the ethnicity of the Macedonians. What the South Greeks were proud of was their cultural evolution. So they were a little bit snobbish on the Macedonians. They thought they were a bit retarded culturally. Don't forget that Aristotle, the philosopher who is voted among the most influential men ever in history, he was born in Macedonia. He was born near Thessalonica. So he was Macedonian himself. His father was the doctor of Philip II. He was the doctor of the royal palace. And that's why Aristotle was chosen as the tutor of Alexander the Great. And if Alexander the Great wasn't Greek himself, then there wouldn't be that encouragement of promoting Greek culture and Greek way of thinking and Greek language abroad. It would be something completely different. Then we have the biblical days, when Macedonia appears as the call from the Macedonian man, come to Macedonia and help us, that vision of Paul while in Troas. And where does he go? He goes to Philippi, Thessalonica, Berea, and continues later on further south. And when communicating with those Macedonians, he does that in Greek. It's obvious because we have the texts, we have the letters and the books. The centuries go by. We have the Roman provinces of Macedonia, Macedonia First, Macedonia Second, Macedonia Third, and the corresponding capitals is Thessalonica, Philippi, and Berea in present-day Greece. So centuries go by in Byzantine, in Ottoman days, when Islam enters this region with the Ottomans. So in this part of the Balkan region, present-day North Greece, North Macedonia, West Bulgaria, Albania, South Serbia, that becomes a central province for the Ottoman Empire, with a very strategic location for trade, for businesses, for communications. So we have Islam penetrating mostly this region, and many populations adopt the Islamic culture. Unlike the Greeks of the south, for example, or the Bulgarians of the east, or the Romanians, the Serbians of the north, we have a very strong Islamic Muslim influence here in the central part of the Balkans, which is the north part of geographical Macedonia. And we arrive in 20th century, late 20th century, with the fall of Yugoslavia in 1991 and its partition and the creation of many sovereign states like Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, and we also have North Macedonia. We call it now North Macedonia. In 1991, that issue was raised of how this new country should be called. There were 4 years that were very problematic for both countries. Both countries had very extreme, very conservative and very nationalist-minded politicians and governments who mostly cared for their own political benefits and not for if the outcome would benefit the country and the nation. So that problem was not resolved back then. There were suggestions. We call it the Project Meteora. It was the Portuguese Minister of Foreign Affairs responsible for solving this issue of the denomination of the new country. There were some key points at that project, the recommended project, the suggested one, which was the use of a term like New Macedonia or Sovereign State of Macedonia. The people of North Macedonia should admit that they wouldn't claim any rights of a Macedonian ethnicity in Greek land, and that they wouldn't appropriate symbols and historical personalities. Some parts of that suggested project they were accepted, others not. The response by the Greek side was quite low and hypotonic, I can say, and that's why there were no real solution back then. And that issue stayed until 2018, when with the Treaty of Prespes is a complex of lakes that we have right at the border that Greece, Albania and North Macedonia share. So there was the Treaty of Prespes that defined that the name, the constitutional name of that country will be North Macedonia. Because until those days, the name used was either Skopje, the name of the capital city, or former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia. Its abbreviation FYROM, former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia. There has been suggestions in the past to call that Slavo-Macedonia or New Macedonia, an adjective. There was never agreement on the right adjective. So we agreed that it would be North Macedonia, a geographical adjective, because indeed it is North Macedonia, but some key points of the treaty say that the language that they speak is Macedonian language, which belongs to the Slavic languages, that they have no right to use symbols and names that have to do with the ancient Macedonia. The treaty defines very clearly that when we're talking about ancient Macedonia, we're talking about ancient Greek Macedonia, of Greek language, of Greek culture, and when we talk about ancient Macedonia, automatically we think of Greek history, whereas when we talk about North Macedonia, it's a completely different history and nation. So their ethnicity is defined as Slavs as well, and I cannot say that this agreement fully satisfied both sides. There are still very conservative people on both sides. However, the scholars involved in history studies, in archaeological studies, in biblical studies, they say that it was a very fair agreement because it defined fundamental issues that were misunderstood, like the identity, the Greekness of ancient Macedonia. It's very clearly stated in the treaty 2018. So symbols that they were using, like the Star of Macedonia with 16 rays, that was a star found on the gold urn where the ashes of the cremation of Philip II were kept. Names, events, we can talk about historical appropriation, if I'm allowed to use that term. That is not permitted anymore. Also, they agree on the definite borders that the two regions have, Greece and North Macedonia, and they agree that there's no Macedonian group, Macedonian community in Greece, so there's no possibility of the North Macedonians to initiate any liberation war in the future for a Macedonian ethnical group which is in foreign lands, in Greece. The Treaty of Prespes, this is what resolved the Macedonian issue. So this is what I wanted to explain, that Macedonia geographically is a completely different thing, and indeed the neighboring country is North Macedonia. However, when we study Macedonia as a historical entity and from a linguistic aspect, historical, archaeological, then that takes us to Greece, ancient Greece. The industry of this town, Kalambaka, now on your right, and the rocks of Meteora as well, is agriculture. That's the traditional industry, because we are at an edge of a very big plain area. We will drive through it further south tomorrow to Delphi and Athens. So it's agriculture and tourism. The Meteora monasteries have year-round tourism. They do not depend on the season, because there are lots of Balkan people and pilgrimages from the Balkan countries, Orthodox countries, arriving here during Christmas days, winter time, Easter. So it is a place that is open and busy all year round. Agriculture and tourism.
Hang glider.
It's a town of approximately 15,000 inhabitants. Yes, well, there is rock climbing is very popular. It's a very popular activity. There are about 900 designated trails of different levels of difficulty. Some are very easy and some are extremely hard, and for the different types of equipment as well. So it's a very popular field. I don't do any activity that requires me being 2 feet over the ground, floating in the air, apart from planes. And there's also some people parachuting right now. I saw paragliding. I saw someone over there, to your right.
See the parasite red.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Meteora is the word meteorite.
Meteorite.
Meteorite, yeah.
Yeah. That's
Something floating in the sky, floating in the air. Meteorite.
See a meteorite.
You will also see the name written on the brown sign, the street sign.
Yeah.
How did you get that high up? No, I thought you went something up from
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
I
an
thought you always went down.
updraft. It's an updraft.
Wow, just like the Eagles.
Eventually.
I think he's got a motor on there, doesn't he?
Maybe he is a pilot.
Please, let's start getting prepared for the lunch break, because as we will be stopping on the central square, we will block traffic for a little while. So take anything you're gonna need during lunch.
Take my skirt though. I just need to step into that.
Every monk had his slot up there.
Buckhead is what?
Slot up there.
Because I'm losing pounds. Oh, me.
Feel free to share any of those great pictures you're taking, guys. Hear me? Both of y'all have nice pictures.
I'm going to wake up when I hear it.
Let's send these climber friends. Well, you see the cross in between the two? You see the cross? Yeah. Hello. Hey, I have more there if you want to see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, look, you can actually see the monastery there. Yeah.
Darmi vuelta.